In a world where digital currencies reign supreme, one cryptocurrency is poised to redefine the game, no? Litecoin's resurrection and resurgence is coming, and the Litecoin forecast is your 24/7 guide to riding this silver surge. Join us as we stream continuously, analyzing every move, discussing macroeconomic trends, what's driving this bull market, what narratives will come into play as we move higher, and what we'll be watching for signs of a broad market top T. The Litecoin forecast illuminating the path to redemption, hosted by Why Litecoin, joining us now.
Alright, what is up, guys? Let me turn down this music, and then we can talk about the lower time frame stuff here. How's everybody doing? Price needs to triple for us to get back in the top 10. That can happen pretty quickly. Let's review what we were talking about earlier first, and then see where we're at since 2 hours ago. Kind of just waiting until some more people jump in here. We have Jonny, Litecoin, coming in about 30 minutes. It'll be cool to get his perspective on some things on this space, since he's been around since 2016, really. I'll give it a few more minutes before we talk about this. Why does it always shoot up when I'm trying to go to bed? I don't know, man. It'll be, it should be doing this quite frequently, you know, as we break out on the higher time frames. You know, price will move aggressively on weekends, overnight. Turn down music and turn up the price. Got it. Let's turn it down to like 15. It's probably better. So I think there's a few people in here now. We can discuss what we were talking about earlier. I think the pair charts, the LTC BTC chart, LTC ETH charts are pretty important, as well as Litecoin against these altcoins. Earlier, well, I guess yesterday, you know, when we started streaming, we're in this range here, around 136. As it started breaking down, I thought it was likely we were going to retest this $130 level. That was a major area of resistance that we broke through. We ended up coming down a little bit further than that, but then formed this inverse head and shoulders on the short-term time frames, as well as some bullish RSI divergence. And so we're saying likely this is going to recover. It's back inside this range, so recovered those lows, retested this as support. We're kind of grinding our way higher. Let's look at the CMF real quick. We were forming bullish divergence here, which I thought was a positive sign. But now we're just waiting for this higher time frame breakout. We may consolidate here for a little bit longer. But as soon as we break these prior highs, we should start to see that vertical move that we've been talking about, up to roughly 185 or so. That'd be the next area of major resistance around here. Where it rejected multiple times a few years back in the prior bull market. And then I don't expect this to be major resistance. I think we'll continue up. Had been using XLM, as it had almost the exact same chart as a guideline for what we can expect for LTC. So this is the same area of resistance that Litecoin's at right now. Took XLM, the third attempt to really break through, and then it rallied to all-time highs within a few days. I don't know if Litecoin will consolidate this long. It could head higher anytime, really. As long as Bitcoin stays relatively bullish, doesn't break down, which it doesn't look like it will. Again, we were talking about this earlier, but we had bullish divergence forming here. This looks really bullish. The price structure here is consolidating in this tightening range, and I think it at least breaks higher. I wouldn't say super aggressively, but into December 10th, you know, probably break above 100K before a correction, a larger drawdown into early next year. It's my expectation right now, at least. A lot of the macro indicators that we follow suggest that, as well as some of these short-term time frame price developments. So that's a quick update on where we're at. We're also going to have Rickus on, who has been calling this market cycle pretty accurately. I think he goes by Chrono Chartist now. So this guy is kind of a legend now in the crypto Twitter space. We'll get him on at 5 a.m. Eastern time, and then Nick will be on as well. He's been talking about Litecoin quite a bit recently. Said the magnitude of Litecoin squeeze will be glorious. I tend to agree. Litecoin will be the best performing altcoin this cycle. Jason says, I don't understand how some of these Litecoin Twitter accounts are speculating like 20, 30K. Are they talking about 10 years from now? There's a small few that have those price targets. I'm gonna wait for price action to develop over the next few weeks. If we get a move as strong as XLM, I think it could be stronger and actually break through all-time highs, but I'm hesitant to really talk about it too much until we see this expansion. But assuming we get up there, maybe retest all-time highs as support. This is really hypothetical and speculative, but I think the final move in Litecoin can be the strongest really of any cryptocurrency, partially because we're at the largest divergence between really supply and demand that we've ever seen for this asset. I've explained this multiple times on this channel, but I know there's new people coming in here all the time, so I'll re-explain myself. Basically, what you have with Litecoin is that it's tracked pretty well with its network activity. So this is Litecoin transactions. Now, these transactions, in terms of median transaction value, have been about the same. So I think it's a good, accurate indicator for where price should be at. Litecoin has diverged pretty far from its historical network value. So it's basically tracked the number of transactions really since inception. But miners had a ton of coins that they were distributing. Now really all the miners have sold all of their coins. And so you have one of the biggest supply squeezes in history potentially building here, where if Litecoin can rally back up to its network value that's tracked pretty well historically, retest all-time highs as support. In the final blow off, if we do get that into like March for Bitcoin, I've long been expecting, these 2017 and 2021 Bitcoin stackers to finally start sending coins to exchanges to take profits. And when that happens, there's just so many of them. There's roughly 25 million private addresses holding cold storage Bitcoin. Bitcoin can only process 500K transactions a day. And so it's likely that the Bitcoin fee level rises pretty dramatically. I don't know why my internet's being slow. I think I have it on here anyways. So I think it's likely that this Bitcoin fee level, it is grinding higher, reaches and breaks all-time highs, because we haven't really seen a lot of transactions head into the mempool, not many long-term holders or very old coins being sent to exchanges, but that should happen. And because of the other sources of demand that we have, oops, this looks really dumb. With Bitcoin runes, ordinals, meme coins on Bitcoin, plus, the highest degree of profit taking we've seen from long-term holders, maybe in history, that will see this rally substantially beyond its prior all-time high, which will then price out a lot of the higher value transactions on Bitcoin that are occurring every day. And Litecoin's the chain that historically gains those transactions. No other chain does. And so I've said for a long time that Litecoin's basically the second Bitcoin chain to be monetized, because they're very similar in terms of code and how they work. The security model is identical. You can notice here that every time Bitcoin fees increase, that's when Litecoin gains its users and transactors, but they never really leave the chain after they migrate to Bitcoin. The difference this time, though, is that Bitcoin's going to be monetized, or Litecoin's going to be monetized in the higher value ranges, not just these small $50, $100, $200 payments. So if it dramatically increases its network transactions at the same time, increasing those average value transactions potentially 10 times, then we're going to see a pretty dramatic fundamental demand catalyst come into play in the very end stages of this market cycle. So assuming that happens, those types of price targets are possible, especially if we get a dramatic narrative change, a true blow off in the broad crypto space. It's not impossible for that to happen. Jason, thanks. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. That's what I set up the stream to do, is explain all of this stuff to everyone. BTC over 4, that's programmed. Potentially, I think long term, if these networks are adopted as money, that's what we'll inevitably see. We'll see these two networks converge in network activity, narrative will change to match reality, and then price or market cap should converge between Bitcoin and Litecoin. Like and subscribe, please. Yes, thanks, John. 5 away from 400. Trying to get to 500 here as soon as possible. Any likes and subscribes help. Plus, I'll be doing these live streams daily, and we have a lot of cool people coming on. So Tony, the bull, will be on tomorrow. He's been bullish LTC for quite some time. He'll give us his technical perspective on the charts. He is a certified market technician, so definitely knows what he's talking about. And I think it'll be a fun, informative time. He'll be here tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern, I believe. So don't want to miss that one. I know it's all speculative, but I've heard March is going to be a good time to sell. Do I agree? I think selling early is better than selling late and round tripping things. So based on historical timing of these cycles, typically you have about 4 months after Bitcoin convincingly breaks its all-time highs. So that's what we just did these last 4 or 5 weeks. Same thing happened in 2020. So this was the all-time high level. We had 1, 2, 3, 4 green candles. And then basically altcoins made the majority of their move within 126 days. That'd be 4 months. It was the same in 2017 for that first giant alt season where most of the money was made. Yeah, we had a blow off in late 2017, but the vast majority of gains already happened. Some coins made 10x moves at the end of the cycle, like Litecoin and XRP, but they had substantial gains early on. So if you catch that first move and you take profits and you're comfortable with risking a little bit more for the potential of another blow off, you can. But yeah, I think 3-4 months is good timing based on history to try to look for exits. It's possible we top early too. So if it gets to certain price levels, taking profits is never a bad thing. Will any news change your mind? Generally not news, but I'd be watching the on-chain signals for Bitcoin. So if we start seeing lots of long-term holders start sending coins to exchanges, that might change my mind. Actually, in 2021, it sort of shifted my perspective because I did notice on BitInfo charts that there were a ton of Litecoin and Bitcoin being sent to exchanges. And then I created a shorting the corn X account to talk about this. But we can pull up Litecoin before the data got messed up. So it's messed up since like 2021. But we had this giant spike in coins sent to exchanges in May of 2021, and that worried me quite a bit. So if we start to see that happen with Bitcoin, it could potentially be a sell signal. We'll look at technical bearish divergences to form as well. So bearish divergence on CMF, which is called the tops on the weekly time frame prior with Litecoin. We'll be looking for that too. And if the on-chain and technicals align with something other than we're predicting right now, we'll talk about it. BTC over 4 gang. Yeah, I think it's going to become a meme, honestly. If Litecoin does make a vertical move here, I think you're going to see a lot of popular people talking about that narrative of 0.25 ratio on the Bitcoin pair. Just like the Dogecoin to $1 meme, it might not, probably doesn't get there, but speculation can drive it there, right? If the narrative and psychology changes around this asset, which it should match reality, then you can definitely see that. And because almost nobody owns it, and most of it's held by long-term holders that aren't willing or that eager to sell right away, with enough momentum behind it, it can get pretty crazy. Everyone takes profits. Well, we can look at like the cohorts of people most likely to take profits. Generally, it's miners that start selling first and then long-term holders. So we can just look at that against LTC. So others kind of started taking profits. They haven't really this cycle. It's really just been the miners. So miners make up long-term holders too, and that's why this data can be a little bit confusing. But really, a lot of the hodlers were miners because the miners held them in reserves for longer than, I think it's 155 days, so they get counted in that statistic. And when they'd been dumping here, you see these drops in hodlers that correspond with the miner reserve drops. I don't think that many hodlers have taken profits. Really just been this miner reserve dumping. So we'll see. We'll monitor this, see how steeply it declines. But really, if you adjust for the miners, it hasn't dropped hardly at all, right? The 45 million to 42 million coins, but miners have sold way more than 3 million coins. So without those, this is likely higher. I've looked at miner reserves over hodlers or hodlers over miner reserves, and we have the highest degree of hodlers versus miners holding ever in history. Bad at taking profits. Yeah, that's the hardest thing, is exiting, for sure. Everyone will be calling for higher at the top. People are max bullish at the peak. With the prospective entry of institutional players, higher probability of an elongated market. I know that's a common perspective, and it's possible. I'm not going to deny that it's impossible, but to me, I think institutional buyers are going to be buying the top in FOMO, and some of the quickest to capitulate, because they'll realize what use do I have for Bitcoin other than speculating on it. So you could see people like Michael Saylor be forced to sell in the bear market lows. I don't necessarily agree that institutional players are going to win. They're definitely late. Retail's won in the past, and I think retail's going to win again this cycle. Like, look at what Fidelity says about Litecoin, right? It's like a high school homework project, their research. If Saylor is forced to sell at the lows, Bitcoin will be in trouble. Yeah, for sure. We definitely could see that happen. I don't know to what extent he's leveraged and what, I think his average buy price is roughly 50K. I don't know what his liquidation price would be, though. I could dive into the details of that in the future. So Rickus and Nick are both going to be here later. Nick is here tonight, US time, but Rickus is in Australia. So we plan to do a little bit later after Nick. But if they both want to come on at the same time, that is cool with me too. Let me check. Do you expect the next hike to be by the end of the day? I don't know if it'll happen that soon, to be honest. I think this may take a little bit longer to consolidate. But I would say it's pretty close. Whether it happens in a day or 3-4 days doesn't really matter to me. I do think the structure is pretty bullish. I know Rick has posted a chart on breaking out of this downtrend of RSI. And so, but I tend to not use RSI as much. I like CMF, looking at money flow into the asset. When we start building bullish divergence, has been historically really accurate for me, at least. This might take a little bit more time, though. I really don't know. But I am confident that when it does break, it should be a significant move, because you don't have much resistance here until like 185 or so. And I don't even think that will be much of a block on price except on the short-term time frames. Most likely, I think we break similar to XLM and XRP, but potentially even stronger, just because I can see the on-chain supply constriction, and this asset's way tiny compared to XRP. So XRP now $144 billion market cap, whereas Litecoin is not even 10. Bitcoin Cash actually had a pretty big move over the week, 20%. Litecoin's up 42%. So we're just waiting for Jonny. He'll be in here in about 9 minutes. How heavy of a retracement do you expect to see in case of breakout to 185? Not very significant. I think most likely it follows a similar path to XLM, and you can notice the same sort of level on XLM would have been around here. If you zoom in on the 1 hour time frame, not much. Chart's not exactly the same as Litecoin's, but this high here didn't act as any resistance, really just rallied straight up to all-time highs. There's more volatility or higher price range here for Litecoin than there is for XLM. So it was kind of squeezed between a tighter range for XLM here. This would be like equivalent of 185 with Litecoin. Even say here, that was the prior high, I imagine. Oh yeah, so once it broke up through here, it was all-time highs. Are you guys familiar with Jonny? He's been around a long time. Really cool guy. We were wrong about Monero yesterday. Yeah, it had a major move, actually. Everything's pumping, practically, except the coins that have already run. So like everything except Solana and memes and Bitcoin have been pumping randomly. It's really tough to know what exactly goes first in these cycles. XRP historically led Litecoin, but I wasn't convinced that it was going to again, so I didn't know. Remember the Litecoin queen from Twitter? Yes. I wonder what happened to her. What do you guys think of this song? I made it. It's called To the Moon. I made it on that Suno music app. I think it's pretty cool. There was some daddy Litecoin guy too. Litecoin dad. I'm sure you'll see a lot of people like that as this price moves higher. Again. Really excited for both these guys to give us their perspective on the technical, see where it differs from ours we've been discussing. And I'm curious as to their thoughts because they're generally traders, primarily looking at charts, and I understand the reasoning because this is such a speculative market. But I'm curious as to what their thoughts might be on this fundamental view that I have, because I do think, for Litecoin at least, outside of a lot of the other chains, actually has fundamental growing network activity that does represent demand and can push up price if that transaction activity is high enough, which I think is likely to transpire. towards the end of the cycle. So hoping to get their thoughts on that as well. Got about 2 minutes. I'll message Jonny and tell him we're ready whenever. Hopefully I sent him the right link. I'm gonna double check this on my phone. Yeah, I think I need to resend him the link real quick. Oh, Jonny's here. Perfect. Let me turn down the music really quickly. That might be distracting while we talk to him. Hey, Jonny, how's it going?
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to come here today. It was kind of short notice, and I know you're a busy guy, so I do appreciate that. This is really conversational. It's kind of off the cuff, but how I thought we'd structure this is basically kind of talk about your background, so do a brief introduction. You do have an interesting and unique perspective, I think, that a lot of people don't hear about, and a lot of people aren't familiar with how you got involved in the space, your work in merchant processing. So I think that's super interesting for people to hear. And then we'll talk a little bit about how this space has evolved since you've been here so long. I think since I've been following you since 2016 or 2017, at least.
Yeah, going back to 2017 era.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious as to your expectations for how it would evolve back then versus kind of reality. So we'll get into that. But I guess we could just start from the beginning, if you're okay with it, of how you got involved in the space. When exactly was that?
So I got involved in 2017. I was, as you said, I'm still actually working the merchant processing business. What to everybody out there, that means credit card payments and point of sale systems. That was my background. So I had known about Bitcoin probably going back to 2012, 2013, but I got involved in 2017.
Gotcha. So heard about it. It's similar to me. I had heard about it a few times, read about it in college, saw it in the news, but didn't really get involved till late 2016, early 2017. But you're working credit card processing. Is that what drove you to the space? Because I know you've talked a lot about fraud involved with chargebacks in merchant processing and how crypto could potentially be a solution to a lot of those problems. Is that what drew your interest in 2017?
Oh yeah, that's 100% what got my interest. I didn't come to it from an investment standpoint or a making money standpoint. For me, it was all about a better form of money, a better form of payment. And I really liked the merchant services business. I liked the idea of working. How I did merchant services, I work for myself. So I don't really it's not like I'm part of a big corporation, work for them. I always purchased the equipment myself and kind of took ownership in the accounts that I got. And I got really frustrated with the industry, what was going on, a ton of fraud, a lot of shady dealings, and just things didn't, 1 + 1 stopped equaling 2. And
Gotcha.
I needed an answer. And when I discovered Bitcoin, I was like, this is it. This is the answer. And I remember it as clear as day when the light bulb went off. I was in my office. and there have been a few people that have talked to me about Bitcoin and crypto, but one guy in particular that I work with in the merchant services business kept talking to me about it. Now, he was an investor in Bitcoin, and he wanted to show me something one day. It was a Litecoin transaction, and we looked at the back end data of like the block clearing, the transaction ID, all of that stuff. You can get on like a block cipher, like bit apps, and I was blown away. I was like, how did we get this? And he kind of explained it to me, and I was just like, wait, we don't have to call into anybody and wait on hold forever. And that's what we were dealing with the banks. And he explained how it's decentralized and there's no permissionless, and he used the word no central authority. And that was my main problem, was the central authority just making the business that I was in bad and terrible. And I remember standing up in he showed me $1,000 transaction that was sent from New York to Cali. I believe he bought a baseball card. He's very big into baseball card and trading and all that. And I remember standing up in my office, and I ran around the office and I said, we're all out of business. And people were like, what are you talking about? I said, not right now. I said, but in the future, I said, this is going to take us out. I said, this is the next thing. I said, this is a real invention in terms of money and payments. And nobody understood it, but I did. That light bulb went off. And since then, I've been bit by the crypto bug. And it's, here I am now still talking about it. The mission's not done yet, or mission's not accomplished. So I'm not leaving until I feel like it's accomplished.
Gotcha. So you solved those problems. What were, if you don't mind explaining a little bit or expanding on that, the problems specifically that you were going through, and how Bitcoins and Litecoin potentially solve those? Was it mainly in the chargeback space, trying to find out how to get the money to merchants, or what specifically?
That was one aspect of it. The fact that credit card payments are never safe. They're never finalized. So people would call in and say, hey, we want to talk to you guys. We have a sale we can make. Can you check to see if the card is stolen or not? We would just say, well, we have no way to tell. How the merchant finds out is after the fact, and the money gets taken right out of their bank account. And that's how they find out that the card was stolen. So I said, no, there's no real way to tell. And if that card works, it hasn't been reported stolen yet. And I remember one guy in particular saying, look, Johnny, this isn't a good answer. You have to I want to make the sale here. What payment form can you offer me that's safe? These credit cards have to be safe if this is what you're selling. And I just said, I'm sorry. I said, I didn't create the system. I said, but it's not, I can't guarantee you that it's safe and you're going to get to keep the money. I can't do that. And so that was one aspect, was the chargeback piece. And the fact that when my friend really explained Bitcoin to me, I realized that transactions were final. And that to me was amazing. And I said, we can offer this to our merchants for these risky payment situations. They can take payment and know that it's final. Wow, this is a breakthrough. There was other things as well. I was seeing a lot of something called synthetic identity theft. And what that is somebody out there steals someone's identity, and the person was a small business owner, and they create a fake business profile of that person's business, email address, website. They have all the information, and then they would apply for merchant processing with people like me or companies that did what I do. And, it goes through a system, and if they have good credit, it gets automatically approved. And these people they would get away with stealing a good amount of money before the back end processor would catch up to them and close the account. So I was buying a lot of leads at the time. I was a pretty good salesperson of closing deals and all that. And the leads we were buying turned into be 100%, pretty much 100% fraudsters, people committing this synthetic identity theft. And I just said, man, this isn't good. And one thing I was questioning, I started being able to sniff the people out. And then in some instances, I would actually figure out who the real person was that got their identity stolen. I would contact them, say, look, your identity's been stolen. But the processors behind the scenes didn't care. We would call in and be like, hey, we got somebody that's trying to submit an application. Do you guys want to listen in on the phone call? And they'd be like, no. And we'd be like, well, this is happening left and right. Are you guys like actively investigating this or looking at this? They could have cared less. Mm-hmm. And I just said, man, if they care less about this, and I'm just one guy doing this, on what grand scale is this happening across the United States? And then I said, well, how does our money work? Why don't they care? Like how is the money going to last in the future if there's all this fraud every day? Like, what happens to the money? And I didn't even know about gold at the time. I didn't know about any of this, but I started asking these questions. So that was a really big factor, was this identity theft and the processors behind the scenes not caring about it, not trying to catch the people. And so that was a big red flag in my mind, the chargeback piece. And then they started targeting innocent merchants. Like I remember one instance when they said, well, accounts that have the word technical in the name, there's a lot of fraudsters that were posing as tech support companies, remote tech support, technical assistance. So they said, any company that has the word technical in the name, we're shutting down the account. And not only that, they went into the bank accounts and they just sucked a ton of money out of the accounts. And they did what's called hold it in reserve. Mm-hmm. And this happened to some honest merchants that were legitimate technical companies. And I remember it happened to one merchant in particular that I just had signed up, and they shut his account down and they took $49,000 from him. And the guy was like, when do I get this money back? And 180 days later is when they would get it back. So I just, this isn't right. My God. And it was all of that. And then some other things, but it was basically those types of things that just led me to say, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this and go about this.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. I think that's an important point that a lot of newcomers to this space who are interested in the kind of the sound money aspect and sort of the people just kind of unaware of how the financial system works. I think there's an important point to make between the differences in money and credit. I think it's largely misunderstood within like the broader like ordinary community. Even in the financial community, there's this misunderstanding between money and credit, and things like Bitcoin or Litecoin are actually money. You do get final settlement, at least a high degree of confidence after a certain number of confirmations that transaction is not going to be reversed. Whereas with this credit card system, yeah, it's not money, it's credit. And if there is, claims of your card getting stolen, it's vulnerable to a lot of fraud, and there's not really a solution to that. There's just this back end way of trying to mitigate the fraud, but it's impossible for them to really cut down on it. So how has that process gone since you started talking about this idea to merchants back in 2017 versus like today? Have there been a lot of merchants that have adopted crypto as a payment option and then continued to use it? Or are there other things that may have got them excited about in the first place, but then, because of regulatory issues, they've shied away? How has the adoption grown or faded away over the last years?
It started out pretty good where people were receptive to it. And, we were getting a little bit of traction, riskier payment situations, riskier businesses that had a higher chargeback ratio. They were definitely interested in accepting Bitcoin or Litecoin or, any popular cryptocurrency for payment. So we did get some traction right out of the gate. The issue has been Operation Choke Point 2.0.
And yeah, for sure.
That was kind of going on before officially Choke Point 2.0 was kind of known. A lot of banks were targeting merchants. So what happened was, if you noticed in the beginning, I was talking about which merchants were now accepting Litecoin for payment. And I was doing videos there, and we were really trying to promote pay with Litecoin. They'll give you a discount. They loved it. And actually they loved it for the fact that they were getting kind of some online marketing. The Litecoin community is really receptive. In those riskier payment types, they liked that it was a final payment, final settlement. All good stuff. Unfortunately, due to the who I call the banking industrial complex, I had to stop talking about the merchants that were accepting Litecoin because they were being targeted by their banks, and the banks were shutting them down, scaring them, telling them we're going to investigate you for laundering money, and just all the fallacies that they talk about crypto, they were going after these people with. So that was troublesome because, we're really into crypto. If you're watching the show, you're on crypto Twitter or crypto X, as they now call it. But merchants that run businesses, they just need to get money into their bank account. They are, they're cash poor. They're just struggling in most cases to pay their receivables, to keep the lights on, to pay all their vendors. They don't have the luxury of hodling and saying, oh, hey, Litecoin, it's undervalued, let me keep it, or Bitcoin's on. They just need cash flow coming in. So for the merchants, it was really important in most instances to convert right away, because they would say, hey, we love the idea of taking Litecoin or Bitcoin, but we need just to get the money into our bank account, because then the money has to go right back out to pay for things. And the problem was being targeted by the banks and stuff. It cut down a lot of those on-ramps and off-ramps. So it did make it challenging on the merchant level. And then if you notice, I stopped talking about the merchants that were accepting Litecoin or cryptos for payment, because I didn't want them targeted, because I had a few people targeted where their bank came in and shut them down, and then they were in a situation they had no bank account. They had to scramble to get another account set up. They were really mad at me for saying, hey, Johnny, you kind of did this to us. You told us to accept Litecoin or Bitcoin, everything would be fine, and now we got targeted by our bank. And in some cases they could hold funds from people. And then you're talking about a situation where, the banks or merchant companies can put any small business out of business just by holding their funds on them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Most businesses can't last a few days without their cash flow. So if you say, hey, I'm going to hold a significant amount of money for 6 months, they're got to close the doors. It's game over. So that unfortunately, that's the state that we're in. I'm hoping things change with the war on crypto supposedly ending. That'll be great. And if it really does end, and I see that it's came to an end and the banks aren't targeting these people anymore, I'll start marketing the businesses again. Nothing I love more than going out, doing a video, paying with Litecoin and all that. That was really cool stuff. So I'd love to get back out there and do that again.
Yeah, I remember seeing a lot of those videos early on, and it was really exciting. It sucks that, the large monopolistic types of organizations don't want competition, and will lobby for legislation or just restrict and squeeze out these smaller businesses from accepting crypto. That really sucks. Do you think there's ever an environment where we eventually move to native crypto, like local economies natively denominated in cryptos instead of going to dollars back and forth, that we ever just operate natively in the crypto sphere, and so we don't have this problem with needing a bank account? Or do you think that's way far off into the future, or possibly never?
Unfortunately, especially in America, other countries are different. America, people demand easy.
True.
They want things so easy. And that's, if you even look at like a case study would be the chip card integration in the United States. And, we all notice now our credit cards have a chip on it. That technology has been around forever. It took the United States about 15 years more to adopt than the rest of the world. They were doing this in Europe forever. The problem is in the United States, unless it's so easy, we won't do it and adopt it. So I'm afraid that the banks make things easy for people until they have a problem. But you just have your bank account. Now they have some new payment integrations in these bank accounts that they just make it easy to send money around. Hey, you link your account always comes with a debit or credit card. So I'm afraid that native crypto, I don't see where people just use native. I used to see that occurring, and I do blame the crypto community. In 2017, 2018, we had a real shot to get out ahead of the regulators, the bad guys, the banking industrial complex. They weren't ready for 2017 when the crypto market pumped up and it got a lot of interest. And if you remember correctly, there wasn't a lot of KYC on exchanges, and it was much easier to buy crypto and get into it. And, these Bitcoin maximalists were, they brag that they're toxic maximalists. They're toxic, all right. They've been the absolute worst thing for crypto adoption, because while I started out doing this, I said, hey, well, I'm promoting Litecoin, I'm promoting Bitcoin, you can accept Litecoin. There was even payment gateways then that you could accept Litecoin in the front end, and it would settle into Bitcoin for you on the back end. I said, wow, people who love Bitcoin would love this. Let people pay with whatever they want. They're going to get Bitcoin deposited to them. How cool is that? Well, I was met with such resistance of them just screaming shitcoin and all this stuff and attacking our tweets. I was like, man, I'm fighting a war against my own people. We're self-destructing, and they really self-destructed things, which, I always had a theory that Bitcoin maximalists, there's something more at large there with what they were doing. Not all of them, but a lot of influential ones. I really feel like they were almost like controlled opposition. Somebody was behind them. Because basically, if you think about it, the government likes the idea of Bitcoin. You can't move it around really anymore. It goes up in price. It helps pump Wall Street. So to the government, hey, Bitcoin's great. We don't have to worry about people using it. You know, Lightning Network doesn't work really. People can't really use Bitcoin in any manner to do anything with. It goes up so they can use it as a tool to pump Wall Street. But Litecoin, I would say they had a problem with because it actually worked as money and you could use it. They didn't like that. You know what I mean? So I feel like there was something nefarious at play with these maximalists, like somebody was behind them.
I would agree. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, they really did a lot of damage to, like, especially what I was doing. So what I do see is if the war on crypto is lifted, I see where like these crypto debit cards will become more popular again. Like we had a Litecoin debit card, and I would love it if, when a Visa card is used, everyone always says Visa. Visa's collecting all these fees. Visa actually collects the tiniest bit of fees. It's the bank that issued the card that collects the lion's share of those fees. So my idea was always, let's get rid of the banks. Visa, you can kind of run anything on Visa. Visa is just a payment rail. Let's run Litecoin to some degree. Maybe it is in Lightning Network, right? And maybe Visa is a like LSP, like a Lightning service provider in the future, and MasterCard's an LSP, and then we can use a crypto debit card on Lightning Network, or another payment network, even maybe MWEB, or that would be really cool to me. That would actually cut a lot of people out of the equation. It would make the cost a lot lower to the merchant. I think that would be a phenomenal situation. I think we could actually offer, where it's much faster settlement than Visa now, which Visa now is 180-day settlement. So you could actually offer a much quicker settlement time. And I don't think the banks have done anything good for this country at all. I actually like Visa. They're just a payment rail. I like MasterCard. I'm fine with them. They have cool technology. I do not like the banks. The banks have played dirty. They run cover on a lot of large-scale fraud operations that occur. They turn their head the other way. There's so much dirty business that the banks are involved with. I laugh because, they have like mafia movies, and then you're like, oh, the mob, wow, they must really have been controlling things. I laugh and I say, controlling things? The banks and the politicians control everything.
For sure.
They're just they're like the scapegoat. The banks and everybody's like, oh, look at those guys, they're bad. And it's like, maybe they stole a few million while the bank's stealing billions with a B. So
for sure, yeah. There's a lot of arguments that people made that actually, when a lot of these cities were run by the mob, it was actually better than the current political or government that's running them today. So
way better.
So yeah, and if you look at a lot of the big bank, money laundering fraud, they pay these huge, enormous fines. None of them usually go to jail, and so there is large scale fraud, and you're directly involved and see that on a daily basis. So I'm sure your perspective is a lot different than most people. Most people probably don't realize how much that's actually going on.
Such a massive degree. There was something going on in the merchant world. It was what I referred to as a equipment leasing scam. And was really much more popular 10 years ago. They were sending organized teams of criminals across the country, let them loose in a city or town. These guys were good salespeople, and they would go sign up merchants for credit card processing. They would forge paperwork for a lease, and the lease would take effect, and the merchant would say, well, I didn't sign for this. What do you mean I'm leasing equipment or paying this much every month? The sales guy didn't tell me that. We would get a hold of the paperwork. The merchant would say, I didn't sign this. That's not my signature. We would go to the financial institution, and we would say, hey, look, this paperwork's forged. They didn't care. They never looked into it. They just said, yeah, the merchant has to pay these payments. They're on the hook for it. And it's forged paperwork. Get a lawyer then. And
wow. So they wouldn't take responsibility for it. That's interesting. I wanted to zoom out because you mentioned how things kind of changed in 2017, especially in regards to narrative and kind of this weird goings on or happenings within the maximalist community. I definitely noticed a change, and I have a kind of a thesis around that. I'll pull up the Bitcoin transaction data chart just for reference here. Get rid of this stuff. But basically, like from launch of Bitcoin till 2017, fees hadn't ever been an issue, and so the narrative was that we could continue to increase block size, scale this to an unlimited number of people. But in 2017, when blocks became full, you started to see a transition from Bitcoin as like this growing monetary network where it was getting adoption as a payment method, as a money, to more of a speculative casino environment. So like the last 7 years, Bitcoin transactions haven't increased. We haven't seen growing adoption. We've really just seen increased speculation on top of speculation. So everyone's kind of buying today, at least from my viewpoint, based on the assumption that other people are going to buy at higher prices. So the main narratives in Bitcoin land today are that bigger institutions or bigger governments are going to buy their bags and push the price higher, which to me is kind of insane. Because at the end of the day, what's going to drive price long term is more people using it, and the bigger you build this speculative market, actually the higher the downside risk and the bigger the threat is to actually adopting it as a money, because a lot of people will get priced out and also are unwilling to adopt a money that Michael Saylor or these other institutions are going to dump on them. Whereas with Litecoin, we've seen the opposite. So when Bitcoin blocks became full, fees became expensive, we've seen this dramatic increase in Litecoin adoption as a money, which is good to see. So I'm not sure if you looked, but if I pull up Litecoin miner reserves, I'm curious as to your thoughts on this, because as a community, we've been talking about this a lot. And there have been talks of potentially large institutions shorting Litecoin. A lot of the selling behavior doesn't make that much sense because they've been selling coins as prices started to try to break out, to the extent that they almost have no coins remaining. So we were trying to figure out exactly why these miners were dumping all these coins, who actually it was, because it doesn't make much sense. And if you look at Charlie Lee, he had a tweet thread in 2018 about large institutions reaching out to large Litecoin holders to borrow a ton of coins, like Galaxy Digital, founded by Mike Novogratz, was asking, I think in 2019, around to borrow large amounts of Litecoin. So it seems like it's possible that there's a institutional large short position, maybe off exchange books that you can't see, shorting Litecoin, or maybe selling Litecoin and buying Bitcoin with that leverage. What are your thoughts as to why Litecoin has gained all this transactional activity, but it's kind of being censored? It's not being talked about. Everyone's talking about pump and dump kind of meme coins and various other VC coins. What are your kind of general thoughts on that idea that it's possible that institutions or large players have been shorting Litecoin, and how do you see that resolving, like, going forward?
I definitely think there's like something larger at play. I definitely agree with you that they've been shorting Litecoin. It doesn't make sense, the price action, and where we're seeing growing adoption, more usage of Litecoin, and the price going down or losing value against the Bitcoin pairing. I think it goes back to the fact that they didn't want crypto to be used.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted it to be this digital gold narrative and this number go up narrative and focus on that. So they really attacked Litecoin, like Litecoin censored, like the big YouTubers. I'm in the school of thought where they cannot talk about Litecoin. They'll really have a lot of people coming after them and censored if they talk highly of Litecoin. So a lot of people I know, they ask me, they say, well, gee, Jonny, you say Litecoin, the transactions are increasing, all this stuff. It sounds great. How come no one's talking about it? I said, because they're not allowed to talk about it. That's why. So you mentioned Mike Novogratz.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the people, when I say the bad guys, that I'm referring to. He's the bad guys. He wants to move you into what I would consider, it's called the digital concentration camp. And he likes crypto, sure. He wants it as a tool to control your life. And he doesn't.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, he doesn't want Litecoin to do well and to be used. And Litecoin's being used in spite of all these people. Like the number of Litecoin transactions is exploding. The value transferred is exploding. And it's because it works. Because it's one of the oldest cryptos. It's reliable and it works. People need money to work. So I do agree with your narrative and your thesis on this, or your theory. I think that Litecoin has been artificially suppressed, but it looks like we're starting to break free of that suppression. They can't suppress it forever, especially something like Litecoin where it's transparent and it's scarce. There's only a certain amount of them. And as you pointed out, minor reserves are at a historical low. Well, that means that, that means we could see
pretty rapid supply squeeze, rapid price increase. Yeah, it's interesting because with what they did with gold, right? Once they kind of had it pooled at institutions, they launched a gold ETF. They had most of the supply held up by third parties. Then they outlawed it. And you saw sort of the demonetization of gold. And instead of people having protection against inflation, they were just trusting the government to maintain a currency peg. And a lot of people believe the government that they wouldn't inflate the paper supply. But once you stop transacting with the money itself with gold and you're just relying on a government to maintain a currency peg, then you're vulnerable to the government implementing monetary policy on top of it. So my kind of inkling or thinking is that could potentially be what they're trying to do with Bitcoin, is promote it as the best money ever, the hardest money ever, and then eventually have it all tied up in custodians, ETF providers. And at that point, they can basically take it all, issue paper receipts against Bitcoin, say, hey, this is great. You can use Bitcoin. It's a store of value. But then implement the same type of monetary policy they do today, basically delinking Bitcoin from those paper receipts. So that's what I think could potentially be at play. And a lot of these influencers could be, potentially, I don't want to make any accusations, but potentially be controlled by, higher powers or federal agents.
Yeah, 100%. We can't say specifically who, but I have a strong feeling that some of them are, and some of the influential ones certainly are. I have a theory that, they'll hodl and, okay, well, hodling Bitcoin, people say, Bitcoin, it's freedom money. Just have your Bitcoin in a non-custodial wallet, a ledger, or some type of hardware wallet. You're good. I have a theory that are not good if you have Bitcoin in a, if you only have Bitcoin, let's put it that way, in a hardware wallet or a non-custodial solution, because I think if we ever hit a chaotic scenario, not even maybe a Mad Max scenario, just a scenario where there was a lot of panic and chaos, the Bitcoin network could get so congested where you might have your Bitcoin in a hardware wallet and now you need to actually use it, and you go to send a transaction and it's going to get stuck in the mempool for weeks or months and it will not clear and go through. And then you're going to, what a shame that'll be. You thought you had everything figured out. You were a Bitcoin maximalist. You only had Bitcoin. You said, I have it in my wallet you're very technical and you have all this stuff you figured out and multi-sig and all this, and then you can't even send a transaction out. That would be a wild scenario, but I could see that happening, and I could see that happening as an attack on the crypto community at large, and to say, look, you don't want your Bitcoin or your crypto in these solutions that you hold yourself. Look what happened to Bitcoin people. They couldn't even send a transaction. The network got congested and got chaotic. Hold it with us. Hold it, have it in an ETF. Hold it with your trusted third party. That's the best way to be. That holding your own private key, that's kooky stuff, or for the people that started now. That's for cypherpunk. We're past that. Michael Saylor says that's crazy. You know what I mean? Don't you want to be like Michael Saylor kind of thing? So
yeah, it definitely seems like there's been a real narrative shift from, back in from 2013 really through 2017, the popular narratives were self-custody, make sure you take possession of your own money, verify it yourself, run a node. And then it's switched dramatically to just price speculation. So yeah, I do think, especially given how many people have stacked in cold storage from 2017 and 2021, and based on on-chain analytics, a lot of those coins haven't moved. But if we get to a parabolic rise and some of these people want to move their coins to maybe take some profits, you could see the fee level rise dramatically. And that's what's making me bullish on Litecoin, because if you look here historically in red or Litecoin transactions, and Bitcoin fee level is in blue, every time we see the fee level increase up until this cycle still, that correlation between high Bitcoin fees and Litecoin network activity holds, but people tend to just stick around on Litecoin every time they migrate. And so if it happens in a higher value range, you could really see Litecoin be monetized at much higher value ranges, which in the supply restriction environment we're in, we could see a pretty crazy price rise for Litecoin. And that would be cool to see. But I do agree with you. Yeah, it could be used as a way to try to centralize control of Bitcoin and rely on, government regulated banks or third party processors to hold all of the Bitcoin. I wanted to ask you a little bit, kind of change focus here on the OG Litecoin community. So there used to be, back in 2017, 2018, a lot of relatively popular influencers that had been supporting Litecoin, talking about it quite a bit, and really some popular YouTubers that are even still around today have kind of swayed away from talking about Litecoin. They've moved on to more speculative chains like Cardano and various other proof of stake platforms. I don't pay attention to like the broad OG Litecoin community, but are a lot of those people still around that you used to interact with back in 2017? And do you still feel the same type of community support that there was back then?
The great thing is a ton of new people have joined the Litecoin community. Awesome people. I think we shook out a lot of the people that were dead weight or that heart wasn't in the right place. Actually, somebody great just joined the chat, Clint Westwood. Awesome dude. So is John that's in the chat. Really good dudes. They've been around for a while. But there's a lot of people that abandoned ship And, I'd say a lot of the reason is because, like I said, there's a lot of targeting of Litecoin. So they wanted to kind of hang with the cool kids. It's kind of like being in high school.
For sure.
Cool kids invite you to their table at lunch. You look at your old friends and you say, hey, I'm sitting with these guys now. And so that's unfortunate, but that's human nature. I guess I've always been a little bit of a rebel my whole life. I said, screw the cool kids. I want to do what's right and hang out with the people that I like. And
100%.
But awesome people have just joined the community. I mean, there's just so many cool people. I mean, look what you're doing. Kyle from 84 million. Mm-hmm. And I can go on and on of great people that have joined the Litecoin community. And these people are builders. Yeah. They're really here. Their heart's in the right place. So I really value the Litecoin. Litecoin community is a great community. It's a very open-minded community. We're not, Clint Westwood, this man has given away more Litecoin than most people have. Giving it away, having people download wallets, and he's giving you Litecoin. I mean, I've been at bars with Clint Westwood. He goes out to smoke a cigar, and he's downloading 3 or 4 people on the street. This is what it's about. Awesome. Same thing with Paulie P. He's in the chat. Paulie P, same thing. He's giving away more Litecoin than you could imagine. So there really is a lot of great people. Again, some of those people, they abandoned ship or we don't see them anymore. People, I think before I came on, you guys were talking about Litecoin Queen and other people. And, kind of like you'd say fair weather friends, I guess. So it's
for sure. Join for the hype and don't stick around for the hard times.
Like in my case, I was here for better money, and I really wanted to see a better form of money, better form of payment. What you talked about, would I ever see a future of people just using Litecoin and maybe just transacting crypto and keeping it rather than going back into dollar? That would be an amazing thing. I would love to see that happen, even as a merchant payment processor, because the technology is there for Litecoin payments to run through these POS systems. Instead of charging 3 or 4%, we could say, hey, we'll charge you 1/4% or 0.5% for Litecoin payments. We're still making money on our end. It just costs the merchant a lot less. To me, that's
it's a win-win.
That's a win-win to me. And then they can't get fraud. So I'd still love to see. I do see that occurring outside of the United States. Now, if the United States lost its reserve currency status of the dollar, then I could see it occurring in the U.S. But as long as we're the reserve currency, I would think it's it's a far cry from happening.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. Well, I really appreciate all the work. You've stuck around and constantly made these videos that I see posted on Twitter. So you've been hard at promoting Litecoin and basically just freedom, having the right values and staying at it despite the price not going up. So we definitely need people that are convicted like yourself and Clint and all these people that generally mean well to stick at it despite all these other pump and dump coins having the hype and the big money promoting them, because really Litecoin has almost zero marketing dollars. It's just up to this smaller community of basically regular people going out and trying to make a difference where they see value, right? Your perspective is unique in that you saw value based on your work experience. Other people see it in different ways, but it's cool to see. And I would agree with you that the mind share for Litecoin has grown dramatically. A lot of people have been pushed out of Bitcoin. The real builders like Paul Stork, who's working on drive chains, David Burkett, who built Mimblewimble basically alone with Charlie Lee. That's really cool to see. So despite no marketing, Litecoin's had probably one of the largest increases in technological improvement over any chain. And it's been done almost no funding, so it's really impressive to see, and eventually the price will reflect that sooner or later.
And by promoting Litecoin and talking about it, it's really undervalued. I did a tweet last night, and I showed the transactions, or either transactions or dollar amount sent.
Mm-hmm.
It was on the Litecoin blockchain and then on the Dogecoin blockchain. And I said, hey, nothing against Doge, but there's a lot less transactions and value being transferred through the network. And I said, Doge has 6 times the market cap of Litecoin. They mine the same algorithm. And, obviously you guys know what the merge mining and all that. So one coin clearly seems undervalued. So you can kind of feel good about yourself talking about Litecoin. There's a lot of statistics backing it up and real world stuff where, I see a lot of people are pumping XRP right now. They're like, oh, it's going to be used for the CBDC and it's going to be used by the Federal Reserve. I mean, those are the people we want to get away from. And now you're telling me, hey, it's good because it's going to be used by those guys. I've never met anybody doing anything on XRP ever.
Sure.
You can't validate that network. You can't see the transactions that are moving through it. This is all, that's a conspiracy theory. Litecoin's real. Hey, it's real value. There's real transactions moving through it. I can prove it on the blockchain. We see all the time. People are buying Rolex watches and Patek's and cars, and they're paying with Litecoin. It's really being done. BitPay is the largest crypto payment processor by far, and Litecoin is the #1 coin used on there. And Litecoin was probably one of the last coins they integrated. It took them forever to integrate.
Sure, yeah.
So
it's interesting that happened. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, we were after him for a while. John Kim was after him. I know Charlie was after him. A lot of people in the Litecoin community were after him to integrate Litecoin. And when they finally did, it paid dividends for him. Because like, wow, the Litecoin is actually used. The community actually wants to spend their Litecoin. They're not just saying, like I used to say, hey, hodl's great, but if you hodl until you're dead, you're going to miss out on life.
For sure. Yeah, the only use case for money is to eventually spend it.
Yes.
So hodling, I think, is just a narrative. So you get a bunch of regular people to restrict the supply, so then the larger players can distribute their supply at higher prices. That's where that narrative comes from. It's tendency to try to restrict the supply from everyone else, so you can dump and become rich. So it's kind of funny, but yeah, you make a lot of good points. What I wanted to point out is that Litecoin's not only the top used, but it's also the top for payouts. So there's this narrative that Bitcoin is a store of value, but more people are preferring to hold on to their Litecoin now than Bitcoin, at least these BitPay merchants. So in terms of like monetary evolution, you generally see monies originally become mediums of exchange because they're good payment methods, they're easy to use, they're portable, right? All the things that we talk about of what makes objectively a good money. And then eventually people start to hold on to it because either they think it's undervalued or it does actually store value, and you're seeing greater levels of adoption. So it's cool to see not only Litecoin just being the most utilized coin for payments, but also becoming the most used for payouts as well. So that kind of conflicts with the hodl mentality from the popular influencers with Bitcoin, and actually seeing people are preferring to hold on to their Litecoin, not just convert back to dollars. So I thought that's an interesting stat. And the other point you made was on Dogecoin versus Litecoin, and I've made that point on this channel for users quite a few times. But for anyone new, if you actually sort out the number of Dogecoin transactions that are happening for real economic value, yes, it says 350,000 transactions over the last 24 hours, but the median transaction value is 0.00043. So if you actually separate all the ordinals, runes, non-economic transactions, it's doing about the same as Bitcoin Cash, about 20,000 real economic transactions a day, versus Litecoin is doing about 10 times that. with a median transaction value of 200. But Litecoin, like you said, is about 6-7x less in market cap than Dogecoin. So from that perspective, it's undervalued. And I think more smart money that comes into the space should understand that, should be looking at these things rather than just buying them based on hype. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that. So a lot of people thought that because Elon came into the space and he was promoting Dogecoin as this payment method, that you'd see adoption. But if you look at the stats here, if you check transactions or node count, it actually went down after the 2021 cycle. So Dogecoin was actually used less than it was before the rally than after it. And then all these spikes up are just non-economic stuff. What are your thoughts on that? So a huge centralized figure with a ton of influence, maybe the most influential person in the world, promotes Dogecoin like crazy. Price goes up, but actually less people use it on chain. What do you think of that, John?
Because it's the it was like the Reddit crowd, like the Wall Street Bets people. They probably were most of them probably were using Robinhood or something like that, so they're not actually taking possession of it. The Dogecoin community, nothing against them, but they're not talking about using Dogecoin. They're just talking. They're just showing memes and Elon and all that. Where Litecoin, we're actually talking about payments. It's all about payments, transferring value, MWEB. How to move money through there. So what we talk about is completely different. Sure, we have some conversations about price and how it's undervalued and price should appreciate. And we're so beat up in terms of the Bitcoin pairing. But a lot of the conversation around Litecoin is around payments and money and transacting, where I don't see that coming from the Dogecoin community at all. I just see pictures of a dog and Elon. And
charts,
pretty much it is Elon or the dog.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. I would agree. I think it's cool, and I think you guys owe the community some credit. People like Clint that have been pushing adoption for quite a while, giving out Litecoin for free, yourself promoting it, probably has a lot of influence on this monetization process. It's interesting too, though, if you look at worldwide, like global adoption, it's not just the United States that's growing in Litecoin usage, node counts, and transactions. It's pretty evenly dispersed around the entire world. So that's also cool to see for Litecoin. What would you say is, and I was asking about 2017 versus now. So Litecoin's role in the crypto space in 2017 versus kind of its role today. Do you see it as having the same relevance, more relevance, less relevance? Because I think the speculative community thought it was dead when I was seeing the opposite. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on that.
I mean, it has more relevance now than ever. Crypto's in the spotlight. And, let's face it, when somebody needs to move money, or a large amount of money, now a large amount of money to somebody could be $1,000, and another person, they might say, hey, a large amount of money to them is 10 million. It all depends on the person's monetary background and how much money that they're holding, how much wealth they have. But for, that $1,000 is of the utmost importance for you, which for some people that could be a life savings, $1,000. If you need to transfer that, you don't want to say, oh, hey, I want to use the coin that has the best meme. You say, I want to use whatever works. I don't forget memes for now. That's cool. I'll talk about that on Twitter, but I need to use what works, and Litecoin works. And that's why a lot of maximalists are closet Litecoiners, because they know that it works, and to transfer value around, Litecoin's a much better option. I mean, even if you want to get into DeFi and you say, hey, I want to swap a coin or wrap a coin and get into a DeFi ecosystem or a DEX. Oh, I have some Bitcoin. Let me swap that real quick. Well, that swap might not go through until tomorrow. So you want to use Litecoin because it works. I think it's more relative now than ever. I think the issue is there's a lot more people in the crypto space that they don't understand the technical aspect of it. For them, it's just number go up. So they don't understand that this stuff's actually used. That's the problem that we're facing, where that's why these meme coins are so popular and there's such a buzz around them, is because people don't understand it. Where I think back in 2017, the people that were in crypto had more of a technical understanding of it. They were more the true early adopters, where now you're getting the next wave come through that doesn't get the technical aspect as much. I love talking to the people that understand money. See, for me, that's why I actually like working with a lot of older people. They don't get the tech as much, but they understand the monetary aspect of it. And when you really explain to them about gold, about silver, how the dollar used to be backed by gold, how silver used to circulate in our coinage, you explain how all that went away, and now how there's exploding debt, and how Bitcoin's limited in supply to 21 million, how Litecoin's limited to 84 million. The older generation understands it. They might say, hey, Johnny, you got to come back here. I need to do a transaction. I don't know what to do. I don't know what button to push. But they at least understand why they own it, where the kids or the younger people know how to use it, but they don't understand why necessarily. That's the kind of the phenomenon that I see happening right now.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because older people typically, I mean, they've lived a lot of life. They've seen what happened. They probably lived through that experience of gold being demonetized and losing its backing against the dollar, and noticed the inflation and the extreme levels of government debt. And so I can see why they'd understand. And the newer generation probably isn't paying attention at all to these types of things. They're on TikTok and interested in other things. Maybe they will become interested if they really feel the effects, which I think they will eventually of all these problems that we have, but we'll see. It's cool to know that some people still actually do care about kind of the sound money aspects of Bitcoin and Litecoin. I wanted to ask you about MWEB. Do you have any experience with this yet? Have you messed around with it?
Yeah. Yeah. I've I used MWEB from the beginning. Had a Litecoin node, Litecoin core, and then I updated it and experimented with sending some transactions into MWEB, out of MWEB, and really cool stuff. And now that it's integrated into Cake Wallet, even better, because most people aren't going to run a Litecoin node, where Cake Wallet, everybody has a smartphone. You can send them a quick link and they can download it real quick and write down their seed word. So it's a lot easier to utilize now. It's supposedly coming to more wallets. I mean, obviously it's going to come to more wallets. It's just, it's just a waiting game. And it's people, a lot of people don't understand, well, why did it take so long to come to a mobile wallet? Why did it take so long? It had to be, there had to be certain upgrades done behind the scenes in order for what's called a lightweight client to support MWEB. That's why it was only available on the full node in the beginning. And now it's available on a mobile wallet would be a lightweight client. So I'm really excited about it, not only for the fungibility aspect of MWEB, the fact that MWEB makes Litecoin more scalable. So I believe I've heard a statistic. You would probably know better than me, but I've heard a statistic that MWEB is anywhere from 3 times to 10 times as scalable, or can handle 3 to 10 times the transaction throughput as the regular Litecoin blockchain. So I don't know if you have an official number.
I don't actually. You might actually know more than me on this, but the way I understand it is it kind of depends on usage. I know some of the blockchain data actually gets deleted over time if it's not necessary. So it does scale better. I don't know the exact like multiple increase, but it is kind of like a second Litecoin chain that operates as an extension block that all the miners mine. It is has the same level of security, and so far we haven't had any issues since launching it. I know there were some worries early on that there might be some technical hiccups, but it's worked pretty flawlessly, and it is getting adoption. Yes, it's more scalable as well, which is really cool. And this is the one feature I would say that Bitcoin lacks, right? If you want a censorship-resistant money, you have to have some degree of privacy. In case governments do try to increase regulation and cut down on usage. Privacy is the tool that individuals will need long term to kind of resist and still operate. So I'm super excited about it as well. It's cool to see that the adoption statistics are rising, transactions on MWEB are rising. It will take a while to build this like peer-to-peer MWEB economy out, and people will have to get used to it. But it is going in the right direction, and it's actually getting more adoption than the Lightning Network. It's dramatically outpacing the rise in like total percentage of coins on MWEB versus total percentage of coins on Lightning, and this had almost no funding. It was just based on donations and Charlie Lee matching them to fund all of this and build it. And so you're kind of seeing the market actually value this stuff over something that got hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. So that's cool.
I'm not anti-Lightning. I know a lot of people are. But I hope Lightning does succeed. It's just that it was misrepresented for what it was being. You know, a common critique of the Bitcoiners back in the day when I was out doing my Litecoin videos and so excited about merchants accepting Litecoin, they'd say, well, Litecoin's not needed because of Lightning Network. And I said, if anything, when Lightning Network really rolls out, Litecoin will be more needed because it's a way to, it's an on-ramp and off-ramp of Lightning. And they didn't get that. And, you know, as you see now, Lightning has a lot of hurdles to get over. It really doesn't work well in a non-custodial manner. You really have to use some type of LSP. I think I'm saying that right. That'd be a Lightning service provider. And what I see is like the big companies being LSPs in the future. I definitely see Lightning as a much better solution than the banking industrial complex. So I really hope Lightning wins and becomes a big success. It ain't replacing Litecoin base layer. If anything, when Lightning is popular, it'll explode the demand for Litecoin itself because, or let me give you another scenario. I've talked about this before. The only way in the future that people are going to be able to get KYC free Bitcoin in a legal manner. Now, that's a lot to unpack in that statement. I said KYC free Bitcoin in a legal manner will be to use Litecoin and to do a cross-chain atomic swap on the Lightning Network, and you wind up with Bitcoin. And what people don't understand is, see, they'd always say, oh, I want to avoid KYC, or I want to go to non-KYC exchanges and all that. And let me tell you what, if you're in the money service business and you're not enforcing KYC, your days are numbered. You're probably going to prison at some point if you're not enforcing KYC. Now, I don't like KYC. My theory was always, let's make it irrelevant. I'm not going to jail. So that's why I always said I'm not working with the centralized stuff. I don't want to enforce KYC, and I'm not gonna come up with ways where people don't need to do KYC, but then I'm putting myself at risk. That's why I liked working with non-custodial wallets. There is no KYC. It's irrelevant. And that was always that's why Litecoin was always a breath of fresh air for me. See, even in the credit card industry, KYC is a big thorn in our side. Really, actually, more of a thorn in my side than in the crypto world is in the credit card payments world, this KYC. Merchants hate it. Why do you need my social security number? They say, I'm setting up a merchant account. It's required. I say, due to the KYC AML regulatory requirements of the United States government. Well, why is that? I say, it's because of the United States Patriot Act.
Yeah.
They told you they were fighting terrorism, but in actuality, they weaponized it against us. So it's look, I want Lightning to succeed. But yeah, we got a little bit off track there, but MWEB is definitely getting more traction than Lightning, and it makes sense because it's on the layer one. MWEB is layer one Litecoin. It's just an extension block. And the other cool thing is you can fully audit the system. You can see how much value at all times is in MWEB. I like a system that you can audit. I think it gives you the best of both worlds. You have the transparency, the immutability of the Litecoin blockchain with the fungibility of MWEB. So really, in my mind, it gives you the best of both worlds.
100%. Yeah, I would agree with you. We kind of come full circle. I do agree that I like the idea of credit layer scaling solutions, but I also agree with you in that I dislike the way it was marketed as this one size fits all kind of package for scaling Bitcoin. You work in the credit card processing world, and you understand the differences between money and credit. There's the same sort of trade-offs with any credit layer, right? Even if it's with Lightning, you have different security trade-offs. It's not the same level of security as Bitcoin, even though it was marketed that way. It's not Bitcoin until you settle. And then eventually all money has to settle out of those credit layers, which still cost you the fee that you were originally trying to avoid by implementing the Lightning Network. So it does have its advantages. You can obfuscate and aggregate transactions in the higher layers and then maybe save on fees, but it's not going to scale the chain like it was marketed as. So I want people to understand that. There's this broad misunderstanding, like I said before, that credit is the same as money. But there's a famous quote from I don't remember exactly who, but a famous historical figure that basically says gold is the only money and everything else is credit. Now, that's kind of the idea with Bitcoin and Litecoin. Their monies and everything else is credit. A lot of these other coins, like XRP, they're more credit layers, right? They're not actually a money. So I think that's important to try to understand when you're looking at these markets, especially long term, and understanding the value proposition.
That's a great way to explain it. And people don't realize there's a difference between money and currency. Gold is money. Silver is money. The US dollar today is not money. It's currency. It's definitely currency, but it's not money. Money needs to have a cost of creation. There has to be value behind it. And you could explain this to anybody you want. Take $100 bill and a $1 bill. Show them to somebody and say, what's the difference to create the $100 bill and the $1 bill? They will, I don't know what answer they'll give you. Usually they'll say, I don't know. And you just say there's no difference. They printed $100 on this piece of paper, and they printed a $1 on this piece of paper. And then ask them, say, do you think there was any difference in the cost in making the $100 bill versus the $1 bill? And maybe the $100 bill cost a fraction of a penny more because there's more security things in it. But really, there's no difference. And what about gold? Is there a difference in $100 in gold versus $1 in gold? Or maybe we use silver. Is there a difference between $100 in silver versus $1 in silver? Sure, the weight. Yes, that's because it actually has value. So that's Yeah, like that's a great point what you brought up about these credit layers and XRP and all that. XRP, it doesn't cost any money to create XRP. It's
Yep.
nothing. So if anything, it's a currency. Now, if I heard in the past that XRP was developing, or Ripple was developing something where you could transfer different cryptos through it. I forget the name of it. They were kind of touting it a few years ago. I never saw it go anywhere. And if they're going to help crypto adoption, I'm all for them. I hope they succeed. I just don't want people to think, hey, this is the same value as Bitcoin or Litecoin when it's not.
For sure. Yeah, I guess that's a good point to transition. I'm curious as to your perspective on this, since we have a lot of new people coming into the space around this time, and there are quite a few new people that have been tuning into this stream. Since you've been around so long, what would be your advice for newcomers to the space, just in general?
Stay focused and stay patient is a real I think patience is a virtue. And I see people in the crypto space, they chase the hype and they abandon ship. In other words, if you're involved with Litecoin to this day and you bought Litecoin in 2017, 2018, 2020, 2021, you have patience. You've stuck it out. That's good. I think, if anything, write down a plan or have a plan and stick to that plan, because when the market's pumping, it's hard to follow your initial plan. But if you have it written down or you have something structured that you want to follow, I think that's a good rule to stand by. And then the other thing is, I don't know about everybody's financial situation, but I wouldn't really necessarily look at using crypto to just make dollars. Use it to maneuver around within different hard assets. I think a great strategy would be, if Litecoin hits a price that you want it to hit, and you say, oh, wow, what do I do now? It hit 500 US dollars. I've been waiting for this. Well, maybe it's a great time to buy some silver. And instead of just moving the money into dollars, because say Litecoin goes to $500 and it doesn't pull back. Say we have hyperinflation at that point in time. And you say, man, I got out of my Litecoin at $500 and now the price is $10,000, but the dollar is not the same anymore. There's so much inflation. I sold it for $500. At least if you bought silver or something else of value, it's going to keep up with the rate of inflation. So I think looking to buy real estate, maybe precious metals or other cryptos. I think you can play Bitcoin and Litecoin off of each other. If Litecoin makes a phenomenal move, maybe then you could take some Litecoin and swap it into Bitcoin, and vice versa. If Bitcoin really pumps against Litecoin, it's probably smart to take some Bitcoin and swap it into Litecoin. I think that's be my advice to newcomers. Look to stay in hard assets and have a plan and stick to it and be patient.
For sure. I think those are all very good points for new people into the space. It is really hard because typically at the top of bull market cycles, that's when people are max euphoric. That's when everyone is convinced the price is going higher. So if you stick to a profit-taking strategy, you can't lose if you're taking profits, right? It might go higher than where you sold, but eventually, it may come back down lower, and you don't want to round trip everything back down and lose out. And then the idea of converting to hard assets is smart too, because those are real things that you can derive utility from, maybe for the rest of your life, whether it's buying a house or a car. Those are things you need to survive. So converting profits into real things that are going to deliver value to yourself long term is super smart. So thanks for that advice. Johnny. I have, I wanted to ask actually anyone in the chat if they have questions for Johnny here while we have him. I'll go ahead and pull up the chat on my phone so I can read. So if anyone has questions there, we'll spend a few minutes, if you have time, Johnny, answering some questions from the chat. And if not, if I don't see any here, maybe we could just get your final thoughts on where this crypto market's headed, like in the next 6 months, where you see it, and then any other things that I forgot or didn't ask you that you wanted to share with the stream.
I see Wendell saying, he's saying you can use BitPay to buy silver with crypto Litecoin. From Andy at Miles Franklin. I've done it a few times. Miles Franklin, great company. Andy Sheckman, he's on a lot of podcasts, really good info he puts out about silver and gold. But all the sites pretty much use BitPay as a payment processor, so you can pay with Bitcoin or Litecoin. I would say be diversified. If you're buying, if you want to buy 500 ounces of silver, maybe pick 2 or 3 companies and buy from a few of them in case there's an issue with a shipment from one. Life's all about mitigating risk. But yeah, great. Like I said, that to me is a phenomenal idea because it's all about ratios. So my target ratio is 10-to-1. So when one Litecoin will buy me 10 ounces of silver, my plan is to take some Litecoin and purchase some silver because I think that's a good move. Now, what US dollar price will that be at? I don't know. Right now, silver's around $30, so Litecoin would need to get to 300. What if silver moves back up again? Maybe silver is at $40 or $45, and Litecoin need to be at 400 or 450. So I like valuing cryptos in terms of ratio to silver, ratio to gold, ratio to Bitcoin. And that to me gives me more of a true value than just looking at the price in US dollars. Obviously, if you live in the US or anywhere in the world, the dollar is the reserve currency. We do look at the dollar price. It's exciting, but always look at the ratio compared to another hard asset so you could really see the true value or the true price.
Gotcha. And then I don't know if you give price targets at all, Johnny. I know you probably strayed away from this, but Wendell was asking what's a realistic price top. If you don't want to answer, you don't have to, but
I would think that you're going to get, as far as the silver ratio, you're going to see where one Litecoin will buy you 10 ounces of silver. That happened in the last couple bull cycles. So this bull cycle, I definitely plan on taking advantage of that. As far as a US dollar price goes, I actually see the next bull cycle of being the real big one for Litecoin, but I think a 2025 price target, I would say conservatively, I would think we maybe like a $700 Litecoin, $800 Litecoin. I would be comfortable saying that. A lot of people say we'll hit 1,000 for sure. Master's saying realistic is 5 digits. I definitely see 5 digits, but I think that's more, a 2028, 2032 time frame, which, depending on your guy's age, for me, I'm really looking at the 2032 time frame, as that to me is like, okay, I'll be turning 50 in 2032. So that's still a young man. And so I think, wow, if I can play my cards right till then, that's when I really make my move. So, but I think this bull cycle, 2025, I'd be comfortable seeing $700 or $800. You could definitely see 1,000. I wouldn't put that out of out of range, but I'm more looking at the ratios to silver, and I guess the ratio to Bitcoin, and to see what it gets to as far as how many Litecoins equal one Bitcoin. And in 2019, 54 Litecoins would get you one Bitcoin. And we hit a low this cycle of probably where, I mean, at one point it was close to 1,200 Litecoins would get you one Bitcoin. Right now, I don't know. What is it right now? Probably 800, 700?
Yeah, 900 or so.
Yeah.
So it's definitely undervalued.
It's definitely undervalued. So it's still a great trade to take Bitcoin and swap it into Litecoin. I expect we'll see more of that as Litecoin keeps increasing in price. I think we'll start to see people, unfortunately, people won't do it necessarily at the right time. They'll wait till the ratio to Litecoin pumps more and then do it.
For sure, yeah. They wait till the narrative makes sense, till people are talking about it, and it's not, from the broad market considered a dead chain or useless. So yeah, narrative, people want to do it at the high prices, which is unfortunate, but that's how like mass psychology typically works. Well, thanks, Jonny, for that perspective. I think your price targets, everyone has various different speculative ideas, but again, like Jonny said, stick to your plan. You can't go wrong with taking profits, and we'll see what happens. Any final thoughts for the viewers, Jonny?
Thank you guys for being part of the Litecoin community. Thanks for listening to me speak about this. I'm honored to be on the show, and I love talking to you guys about Litecoin and giving my insights. And just stay focused, stick to your plan, don't chase the hype, and always look at those ratios, because I think if you do that, you're going to do well over time, and you're going to avoid chasing hype. So look at the ratio, and don't you don't want to be swapping when the ratio was 1,100 to 1. The worst decision you could have done was take Litecoin and trade it for Bitcoin. Worst decision you could make. But there was people doing that because it felt right at the time. Michael Saylor's on TV saying, well, Bitcoin's all that matters. It's like buying a piece of Manhattan real estate. And I love what Clint Westwood says. He says he doesn't want anything to do with Manhattan. But no, just stick to your, just stick to your guns, and just keep an eye on those ratios, because if you do that and stay patient, you always want to be increasing your crypto stack, and you're not going to lose if you do that. So that would be what I would say, and just stick to your plan, and just keep following the good people that don't follow the people that try to give you too much hype. Follow the people that are consistent. And people could have aggressive price targets. That's different than hype. That's completely different than hype. But just people that are consistent, follow those people. You don't want, if people are coming and going and they're talking about Litecoin and a real lie, you're like, where'd this person come from? Last month they were talking about Solana. You know what? Next month they're going to be talking about the new hot coin. So just, maybe like their tweet or whatever. Hey, we like when people are engaged with Litecoin, but don't follow the real people that are actively involved with this. For sure. Yeah. There's a lot of influencers out there that have super high followings that do just try to ride every hype wave. So I think that's important advice. Well, thanks so much, Jonny. I really do appreciate it. You've been here for so long. I think your perspectives, like actually a real world use case for cryptocurrency, and you're in crypto for the right reasons. I do appreciate all the education and work you do for free, just like many other members of the community. And without that, Litecoin's adoption wouldn't be where it is today. So really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Thanks again. Like I said, I was honored to be here, and anybody could reach out to me on Twitter, or now X, at any time. My DM is open. If you have a question about a Litecoin wallet, how to use it, how to send a transaction, I'm happy to help you for free. So I want Litecoin to work. I want adoption. So I will. And if I can't find you, I don't know everything. I mean, there's always in life, there's somebody that knows more than you. But the great thing is, this is a great community. So if you guys ask me a question, if I don't know it, I'm going to go to these guys out there that do know it. I'm going to get back to you with the answer. So just, use me as a tool. If you have any question, don't think, oh, hey, this is a stupid question. I didn't know anything about this stuff when I started. So just no question's a dumb question. Ask me, and you'll find in general the Litecoin community is very open and engaging. So just thanks again for listening to me, guys. I'm honored to be here and talk with you guys.
Perfect. And it's at Jonny Litecoin. Are there any other socials you use besides X, or is it primarily just through here?
Just X. I'm not into being social and cool on the other platforms. I like X. It's information, and it's what I'm looking for social media.
Okay, yeah, me too. I'm primarily there. Just started this YouTube channel because I figured there's like different sectors of people that are just on YouTube or just on X. So I'm trying to educate and attract a broader audience through X and YouTube. But cool. Go follow Jonny if you're not. I know a lot of people already are, but yeah, he'll answer all your questions, like you said, for free. That's an amazing thing to be willing to do, especially considering how many followers he has. So thanks Jonny again. Maybe in the future we could talk again if you're down to come back.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever you want me to come back, we'll do a recap, and maybe if we get some new payment products that support Litecoin, we can talk about it, and I can kind of give my perspective on how I see them being adopted and all that. That'd be great.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Well, have a good rest of your night, and
awesome.
Thanks again.
All right, thanks again. Thanks, guys. Take care.
See ya. Guys, don't forget to, if you're new here, to like and subscribe. These streams will be ongoing for the duration of this bull market cycle, where we'll be having a lot of diverse set of guests here, some specific technical analysts. Like later in about 30 minutes, we'll have Nick on, who is a pretty prominent crypto analyst. You can follow him here at Nicholas, NIHKALOWZ. He's been pretty bullish on Litecoin lately. He's done well with his technical analysis. And then we'll also have Rickus, who is one of the most prominent, most accurate people in this space since late 2022. Called these moves on the higher time frames almost more accurately than anyone else in the space. So it'll be super cool. I'm very excited to see him. He just tweeted earlier that Litecoin's getting ready for its next leg. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier on the channel today. So it'll be super cool to see what he has to say, his updated current thoughts, lower time frame and higher time frame views. Thanks, John, for the compliment. Still getting used to this interview process. This is my third one now so far, but I appreciate the support. And if there's any feedback, comments, suggestions of ways I can make this better, you can let me know in the comments or send me a DM. CryptoCalm says, thanks, Jonny. Can't wait for you to be able to travel and give merchants a shout out again. Yeah, that was super cool to see. Clint, I would rather have a productive black dirt. Yeah. Here for Rickus, awesome. He'll be here actually. Since he lives in Australia, the time zones are tough. So we said 9 UTC, which is not for quite a while. I I can message him real quick and see if that's the right time. So I'm just checking my DMs now. 1 second. What's 9 UTC into Eastern time? I believe it's like 4 a.m. It's 4 a.m. So let's retweet this real quick. We discussing Rickus broader market views as well as specific technical analysis. At 9 UTC, which is 4 Eastern. Internet's a little bit slow. My computer's Q button is broken, or my keyboard. I always have to do that. We'll do a Q&A for the last 10 minutes. I don't have Q. I'll have to type a question. Okay, I think that's good enough. Yeah, 4 a.m. I guess I might take a nap. We'll have Nick in here in about 30 minutes. I'll send him a reminder. I need to use the bathroom, so I will be right back. Let's post this, both of them. And you guys can stare at this chicken, and I will turn on some better music here. To the moon. To the moon.
space, no limits to the sound. Dial it up beyond the blue, a cosmic rave, just me and you. Touchdown lights, we're on our own, dancing through the unknown zone. From Earth to stars, our endless tune, we're moving all the way to the moon. Engines hum, countdowns clear, rockets roar, we're shifting gear. Lift off pulse, 0G, orbiting infinity. We're moon-bound, rhythms loud, system stars, a glowing crowd. Feel the thrust, let's break away. In zero gravity we sway. Dust trails rise, lunar light, dancing through the endless night. Orbit spins, we're breaking free. Beats in space, wild energy. We're moon-bound, rhythms loud, system stars, a glowing crowd. Feel the thrust, let's break away. In zero gravity we sway. Dust trails rise, lunar light, dancing through the endless night.
I realized I didn't add myself to the stage, so I was talking. What did you guys think of Jonny? I think he's a super cool dude, a real guy, like a real one. Been at it for a long time. Are you guys ready for some charts with Nick? We're just gonna keep doing these interviews, streams, trying to get a diverse set of people in here to discuss technical analysis, fundamental analysis, real world use case, all the various points of view around crypto and Litecoin specifically. How's this lower time frame stuff looking? I was thinking it probably consolidate a little bit longer, and it looks like it will take some time. Let's look at the RSI. Not really breaking out. Looks like XRP. This might be the most hated rally of all time. For real. If it continues higher here. On the daily time frame, this looks incredibly bullish. Looks just like a bull flag forming. You really just need to break 130, 140. You're ready only if they state that Litecoin will be worth 4,500 by January. You thought it was great and authentic? Thanks. Yeah, it definitely is. I feel like a lot of the people who've been here for 7, 8 years that have been consistent, had conviction, gone through the rough times, are pretty good people. Most people wouldn't stick around that long so to be able to do that, you have to have some deep conviction, passion, and maybe be in it for more than just the speculative gains. I'm super excited about Rickus. I need to prepare myself for that interview. He is I like Rickus's perspective because generally it's higher time frame view. He does use cross-market analysis, so looks at a lot of macro indicators, liquidity cycle, manufacturing indexes. I really want to ask him about those specifically because I feel like that's under-focused on among most crypto Twitter participants. Most crypto Twitter technical analysts are only looking at crypto-related things. Whereas with my background and focus, I've tried to do something similar to Rickus. Let's retweet Nick's. Come see God do TA. Hey John, help us pump the stream numbers for Nick. I need your help. Let me message Discord. Working on it. I have you named as mod man in here. I don't know if you got the mod privileges, but let's go Reddit. What other places? Telegram, Instagram, Facebook, Facebook friends, DMs, texts. Everywhere. 4chan. Come on. Thanks for working on it. I do appreciate that. It seems like we have less viewers than normal. Before we were getting roughly 100 on YouTube and like 500 on X or so. What does it say the current X viewership is? $600? I don't think that's accurate. It's Nick, so Master. Who's on next? It is Nick, Nicholas. He had some interesting, like, silver Litecoin charts, fractal comparisons, I remember. He just posted this 17 hours ago. I believe we will see the moon charts that we all want. Yeah, he's got great charts. He's like a cool dude. So we're just in the waiting room right now. Jan, can you help us out? Can you retweet this stream so we can get this live viewer count up. John's doing everything he can. Let's go. I need to post this in the Litecoin group chat with Charlie and all these folks. Nice. Beat to the Discord mod. But it's not. It's about who you're a Discord mod for. That's like being the vice president. Okay. Think of yourself as a VP. What is today? Tuesday? It's Tuesday night. Oh, I should just retweet the stream link. Sorry, I'm gonna reveal DMs for a sec. I wish I could change the stream title, but I can't, like midway through. Update it. Should I restart the stream? Do you think that'd be better? Like, go away for 1 second, and then change the title and relaunch it? Alright, you would? Okay, I'm gonna quickly do that. I'll end the stream and then restart it. Be right back.
In a world where digital currencies reign supreme, one cryptocurrency is poised to redefine the game, no? Litecoin's resurrection and resurgence is coming, and the Litecoin forecast is your 24/7 guide to riding this silver surge. Join us as we stream continuously, analyzing every move, discussing macroeconomic trends, what's driving this bull market, what narratives will come into play as we move higher, and what we'll be watching for signs of a broad market top T. The Litecoin forecast illuminating the path to redemption, hosted by Litecoin, joining us now.